know that you are still there listening to Rock City 101.9 FM here in the city of Abeokuta. Yes, it's the Daybreak Show. Citizens from this morning. Again, we will be looking at some issues that have become topical, debatable within the four corners of this country, as it were, and perhaps across the globe. Because one, the personality involved, and two, yes, the substance itself, the country, Nigeria. We'll be looking at the continual stay of Mr. President away from work. What are his implications? What are the legal meanings to that? What is the Constitution saying about it? We are not going to be looking at what the streets is saying. There are so many opinions about that, and some prophecies too. But we will basically be looking at their main issues around the continuous stay away from work of Mr. President. Dele Ayodo is my name.
And I am Tobi, Joseph. It's been more than a month that Mr. President Muhammadu Buhari, the President of Nigeria, has been away in the UK for medical and, of course, annual vacation. The continued report or assertion from the presidency is that Mr. President is not critically ill and not in any hospital, but is just resting. But at the same time, Nigerians have been asked across the country to pray for Mr. President. That question also has come up, that why are we praying for Mr. President if truly he's not ill? But beyond this, let us look at what the law says, what the Constitution says as regards how long the President of Nigeria can stay outside the country beyond the stipulated time. Well, we have on the line a lawyer, and of course a public affairs analyst, lawyer Jiti Ogunye, joining us live on the show this morning. Good morning, lawyer Ogunye.
Thanks for the initial 10 days, now extended indefinitely. Has it breached the law over this?
Thank you very much, lawyer Jiti Ogunye, for joining us on the show this morning. We appreciate you. All right, have a wonderful day.
All right, that's the voice of Jiti Ogunye, a lawyer. However, we have someone in the house who I'm not expecting to look at this issue from the eye of the law, but like many people will say, logic and sense also matters. Reasonability and sensibility is also important when you are looking at issues like this. That's why we have an astute administrator with us, a fellow of the Institute of Chartered Accountants, Chief Samson Odebo. Chief Odebo, once again, welcome to the Daybreak Show.
Thank you, and good morning, everybody.
All right, Chief Odebo, you've listened to the legal perspective, at least from a lawyer. What will be your position be if you are asked the continuous stay away from work of Mr. President, its implications?
Well, thank you, and God bless everybody. I think it's a new era in Nigeria, and it is a blessing in disguise. Like the learned person has just said, under what conditions can the Vice President discharge the duties of Mr. President? He can do so in two ways. One, Section 146, subsection 1 of the Constitution we are referring to tells us that. Section 145 of the same Constitution tells us that the Vice President can become the acting President, provided that Mr. President has transmitted power to the National Assembly. And if you look at that section critically, it says whenever the President transmits to the President of the Senate and the Speaker of the House of Representatives a written declaration that he is proceeding on vacation or that he is otherwise unable to discharge the functions of his office until he transmits to them a written declaration to the contrary, such functions shall be discharged by the Vice President as acting president. And that is the situation we are in now. So the next thing we have to consider is how to manage that particular situation. And to me, I think with God on our side, the situation. Number one, Mr. President has transmitted power according to that section 145, and he has not transmitted another thing to the National Assembly, contrary to what he has done. So the situation we have in place is legally binding on us. How do we now manage the situation? You know, initially, when the situation arose initially, there was what we call anxiety, initial anxiety and fear on the part of the public. We have initial uncertainties and then manipulations here and there. We started to have hearsay and so on and so forth, and the various consequences and insinuations and so. But as of today, the situation, as I've said, is well managed. The initial thing we have to consider is the pedigree of Mr. President. You know, Mr. President came in because of his pedigree, and then they came in with the Vice President on a joint ticket. And without the ticket of the Vice President, the election of Mr. President cannot be validated. That is courtesy of section 142, courtesy of section 142, subsection 1 and 142, subsection 3. Time will not permit us to read it. And then we now look at those provisions, which means that mathematically, Mr. President and Mr. Vice President is a subset of each other as far as that election is concerned. But if you look at the removal of the two, or the ceasing of power to hold office of the two, it appears legally that they are mutually exclusive under the Constitution. That is, removal of one does not automatically lead to the removal of the other two. I'm saying this for public enlightenment so that people can understand. Now, the position we are in, the lawyer has said everything about it. Mr. President has not violated anything. A prolonged stay of Mr. President outside the country is justified under the law because he has not come in to transmit any other letter to the House, to the contrary to what he has said. And like the lawyer has said, legally, the acting president can do anything in respect of the office of Mr. President as of today. He is in an acting capacity and is in charge of the presidency as of today.
Now, you talk about initial fears and worries.
Yes.
It appears even after all this said and done, he has not violated any constitutional provision, he has transmitted power. That fear is still, you can still feel it within the polity. Those who are close to government, even those who are out of government and the opposition. Those who have that fear, are they not justified? Should they not be worried about that? Just stay away and then we don't know what is happening. Yes, we have an acting president, but like we just said, we voted for these two. Not
you see, in Nigerians seem to be a peculiar people in the sense that we do not allow systems and institutions to run in this country. We rely on personality, and if the personality is removed from the system or the institution, we appear to have lost all hopes in this country. Whereas we should have a system and institution-driven policy and purposes, not minding the pedigree of anybody, not minding the person that occupies that particular position. So because of that, and because of the precedent in the past, what actually happened in respect of President Yaradua, where we have a sort of lacuna here and there, where things became uncertain, where the fear grips everybody, where the continuity of the country seems elusive to everybody at that particular time, until the issue of doctrine of necessity came into being. And you could recollect that the doctrine of necessity that we are talking about was even cited that should never be cited again. So which means that it was a situational management at that particular time. So you can never refer to the doctrine of necessity again in this country. And that actually necessitated the amendment of the constitution, like the lawyer has just explained, that whenever Mr. President is going, is leaving, or anything, as long as he has transmits power to his to device, all other things will be well with us.
Okay, yes, so all of that, but we cannot also take away partisan politicking from our system. So those who want to look at it from that way will now say, okay, Nigerians have been shortchanged. We have been cheated by somebody. Do we have, is it right for Nigerians to feel that way too?
Well, naturally, they will feel that way because of the system you are running politically. There will be apprehension here, there will be anxiety here because of the precedent that has actually happened in the past, and because of the fear of unknown. Perhaps if certain thing happens, what will happen to us? Perhaps if it happens, what will happen to us? So everybody will try to really look into what will happen if the eventuality actually happens, God forbid. So these are the reasons why we have the apprehension initially and why we have the fears and so. Even not only in political circles too, economically we have the fears. You see, Mr. President has a policy in place at that particular point in time. And then if Mr. President is not available now to really implement the policy, what will happen to those policies? And what will happen to the future economic situation of this country? These are the investors became apprehensive, everybody became apprehensive, economically, politically, and otherwise.
Now, still talking about direction and apprehension, Chief Odebo, the situation right now is that we don't have a vice president. So we have an acting president.
Yes.
With that, the peculiar nature of Nigeria, which we cannot discard, these positions are tied, identified, or zoned to a particular ethnic group or particular geopolitical region. So apparently, a region is missing out of governance. If you are an administrator, for those who are political scientists and even political tacticians, how should they straighten this at the moment?
I think initially we should not look at it from that angle initially. We should first of all look at the situation. And that is why we have what we call situational approach to management practice. As an administrator, the first thing that you have to do is to see how we can really manage the situation out of crisis so that things can go on, things can be normalized, fears can be allayed, and so on and so forth. That is the first thing that I want to address initially, and I think that aspect has now been addressed. Another thing we have to look at is that how do we prevent such a situation in the future? You see, like you have said, it appears that there's no vice president. Mark my word, it appears as that there's no vice president. We have acting president, but not acting vice president, no acting vice president, and so and so on. These are the areas that we have to look into in the future because of the situation we have found ourselves now. Just like we found ourselves in the same situation during the time of President Yaradua, where what we call lacuna were created at that point in time, and then a sort of grave concern was actually presented itself at that particular time. And then the issue of how do I put it? We look at the office of the president or Mr. President at that time, and we know that what is actually happening. A vacuum was nearly being created at that particular time before people can now rose to the occasion and then established what we call the doctrine of necessity, which actually moved us forward. And then they now look at what they should do in case of future to prevent such a thing, and that actually and that is what Section 145 we have referred to as actually addressed. So in this situation now, what is the immediate solution to the problem? It is a situational approach, and then we have approached it that way. God on our side, we have taken off. The other issue that we have to look at in future, peradventure in future, the lacuna that has just been created as if there's no vice president in place now. What should we do in case of future to really address that particular issue? You see, in a situation, you see, situations will now present itself to really think of what one should do in order to actually address the occurrence of that particular thing in the future. And that is why every day we continue to learn, and we continue to learn. The only thing that I want us to look at this particular point is the interest of the country, the interest of the nation. How do we move the nation forward? What are we going to do to really solve the economic problem that we have? What are we going to do to sustain the efforts of Mr. President? What are we going to do to ensure that there are no lacuna, there are no vacancies, there are no hindrances here and there? And that is why I say, as an administrator, I will approach the situation by having what we call situation approach to management practice.
So, Odebo, we're talking about lessons and having to learn from events. Let's go back a little from the beginning of the current democracy, 1999. Both the presidential and the states, both the federal and the state level of administration, people have said, and to some extent, rightly too, that we don't have partnership. Even during the campaigns, we are told that is a joint ticket. But if you look at 1999 to 2007, the facts are there. That is the president, and then not a vice or a deputy, but an assistant or an aide as the second person, because the president takes over everything. Either that is just coincidental or just the character of the person, until the eventual demise and the medical problems of Yaradua. It was similar to the vice president was in obscurity. And of course, we also know good luck era, 2008 till 2015, similar. And if you look at the states, all the 36 states, is a similar situation. The governor is the governor. And then whatever the next person is called is just an assistant. Now, what lessons can we learn from this event of Buhari and Osinbajo?
Thank you. You see, I will look at it from different dimensions. Number one, I will look at it from the fact that Buhari-Osinbajo's administration is a perfect combination. It is a divine combination. Now, we have never experienced this type of combination in the past, except on 2 or 3 occasions. And that was during the time of Murtala Obasanjo administration. The unity was there. Obasanjo actually continued the policy of Murtala at that particular time, to the extent that we were referring to that administration as Murtala Obasanjo administration. Now, another one that we have to look at is the issue of Buhari Idiagbon administration. So when you look at those ones that have actually enumerated, you will see that they are perfect match, and we derive a lot of benefit from those 2 administrations in terms of continuity, in terms of confidence reposed in their bosses, vice versa. And then, if you now look at it from the other administration we are talking about, there has never been a sort of synergy and confidence that you have talked about among those people that you have just talked about, even at the state level in most cases. In most cases, the vice are being regarded as extra tire, And then even some have even said that I'm your boss. It is what I give you to do that you have to do. That means that there's no perfect cohesion between the two, and even there's no solid harmony between the two. Like I said earlier, don't forget, Mr. President's election cannot be validated unless he has a vice, and that is what the section that I was referred to earlier is saying, which means that in theory the two of them are supposed to be united. The two of them are supposed to be a subset of each other. The two of them are supposed to be a joint product or joint process, and then the two of them should be like the tongue and the mouth. The two of them should be together at all times, projecting and implementing policies here and there. And
Chief Odebo, quickly, let me find out from you. So many accolades have greeted the performance of acting president, Professor Yemi Osinbajo, ever since the president is away. Now, the question is, do you agree with the statement coming from the presidency that people are trying to cause a division between the president and the acting president because these accolades are coming from even those who have criticized the president and his policies in recent times?
Remember, the accolades we are having now should not be a sort of division. Like I said earlier, the two of them are together. They have been implementing the policies all along. Remember, the vice president then has always been sent to so many occasions on behalf of the president, and he has been achieving a lot of things on behalf of the president. Remember that the vice president, who is now the acting president, is the head of the economic team of President Buhari. So if you now look at the antecedents, right from the time of inauguration, the two of them have always been together. There has never been any latitude between the two of them. He has the confidence reposed in the vice president has always been shown by Mr. President, and it is because of that confidence that reposed in him that he willingly transmit power to him. He did not do it grudgingly. If you look at it, he said, "I am going on vacation. I am transmitting power to you." Now, and then he gave him the free hand to operate. So whatever the vice president and the acting president is now achieving is achieving it on behalf of.
Okay, Chief Odebo, because of our time, we'll have to go on a break for the national news at 10. But when we come back, I still want us to really look at this issue of causing friction, causing division, and the accolades that have come, implementation of ideas and policies, which we are now seeing that is actually pulling the economy out of the bottomless pit that we find ourselves in recent time. After the news, we'll come back, and you will also have the opportunity to join us in this discussion. You can start sending your messages to 32120. Type rock, leave a space, type your message, include your name, and send to 32120.
We'll be taking. We have with us in the studio an astute administrator, an accountant, a fellow of the Chartered Institute of Accountants, Chief Samson Odebo.
Well, Chief Odebo, you're welcome back. Before we went to that break, we were looking at all these issues that is generating controversy. Some new ideas, fresh ideas have been implemented by the presidency. If you look at the approach and rapprochement of the acting president in the Niger Delta region and even the southeast. Just yesterday, the presidency launched an agricultural pollution program where there was a town hall meeting with the Southeast Stakeholders Forum, which is actually creating some kind of inclusion in that region. Niger Delta also, the acting president visited 3 different states, Rivers, Delta, and of course Bayelsa, to familiarize with the people, to fraternize with them, and of course even give them more ideas on how to develop the region. Yesterday also, about $20 billion gas project was also launched, public-private partnership, which would help in boosting the economy of that region. The foreign exchange policy is also one of these ideas. So this has made people to begin to make comparisons, and however unhealthy it may seem, between the President Muhammadu Buhari and the acting president, Professor Yemi Osinbajo, looking at leadership styles, their comportments, what they say, and how to calm frayed nerves. So the accolades have started reeling in. But people are saying this is nothing but an attempt to cause division in in the presidency, or between the president and his vice. First, is there anything wrong in appreciating or honoring the acting president for some of these moves? And truly, do you think there is a calculated, orchestrated attempt to pitch the president against the the acting president?
Well, thank you. Is a loaded question. In any activity that involves human being, such things that you have said cannot but arise. But one thing that I want us to refer to is the inaugural speech of Mr. President. If you look at the inaugural speech of Mr. President, all these things that are now being folding or unfolding are already embedded in Mr. President's speech. And like I've said earlier, Buhari Osinbajo administration, I see them as a team, a divine team from God Almighty. And like you have said, all these programs and policies that are being implemented by the acting president are the joint action of Mr. President as well as the vice president, who is now the acting president. I will say that the acting president is now acting the script of Mr. President. I mean, it is because of the confidence reposed in the vice president by Mr. President that he has been able to do all these things. Even when Mr. President was in the country, the vice president at that particular time has gone to the south region that you have just mentioned. The vice president has always been the head of the team of the economic team of Mr. President. And then all these releases that you are mentioning here and there have also been done during the time of Mr. President. So I will say in totality that what is being done now is in conjunction with what Mr. President has laid down before, and is in reality that Mr. President has imposed a lot of confidence in the vice president. To the public, I would like to advise that you have to tread softly. Obviously, like I said earlier, in any affairs that involves human being, there could be a sort of trademarks here and there. For example, those that have been very close to Mr. President in the past, obviously we see themselves as if their position is being threatened because they will use a lot of influence. And then they have their own hidden agenda, they have their own personal interests before. Now that Mr. President is not around, their position will seem to be threatened. And that actually will give rise to insinuations here and there. But in the interest of this country, I will want us to look at what the acting president is doing as a joint action of Mr. President. And we should not go to the extent of treating what is happening in Nigeria today as what actually happened between Saul in the Bible and David in the Bible too. When David was given the grace to kill Goliath, and then the women started to shout, to sing different songs. This is the area where, in the interest of Nigeria, we should caution ourselves. Everybody that has interest of Nigeria should not even look at that area. Whatever is being done now, we should regard this as a divine intervention of God to move this country forward.
All right, let's permit you, our listener, to be a part of the program. All the channels of communication open, the telephone, the SMS, and the Twitter handle. The Twitter handle address is at Rock City FM, at Rock City FM. For the short message service as the SMS, it's 32120. That's after you first type ROCK, Rock. That's the first thing you type before your message. Include your name and area in which you are sending it from. Let's quickly remind ourselves that there should be no insult, no abuse of individuals or personalities as you make your comment. Don't come out with claims that cannot be substantiated. We are keeping to the 2 minutes maximum time allocated. All right, 0809868744 and 0909146967.
Let's start with the tweet. John Adiolu says it's a fluke that the president is healthy. All logic proves that we are being deceived by his aides. When the president is physically incapacitated, he is obliged to resign. A sane legislative will look into this. In short, the deceit about his status is enough to disqualify him as a president over the country. It's unfair to fool the people. Let's focus on the spirit of the law and not the letters of the law. The Constitution won't have predicted a deceitful stay away. John Adiolu tweeted all this. Ogbeni Oluomo says he absconds without trace, only to make calls under his blanket to his goons. And yet you see nothing wrong with that. You in APC. So a president can rule for another country. Nigeria is a failed state. Come 2019, Nigerians will decide more wisely. John Adiolu continued his tweets. Yaradua's state of health was clear, and the people were in one accord praying for his recovery. But PMB's act betrays our trust. The Constitution provides for the replacement of an incapacitated president. That's why his health status is being buried. I disagree on the willful transmission of power to the vice president. It was a matter of necessity. An ailing man has just few choices. We cannot assume that PMB and vice president have full agreement on policy making. If yes, Oshibajo's strategy won't be a fresh sight to applaud. Okay, Donadiolu. Kunle Gab says if the president stays for 1 year, what happens? Are we going to remain without a vice? God bless Rock City. God bless you too, Kunle, for your question. Michael Shibali says it does not matter if Buhari or Shibajo is doing it. After all, they were bound with one ticket. Still APC candidate. Yemi Da Vinci says, why can't President Buhari record a short video addressing Nigerians to dispel all these silly rumors? This is what is strengthening it. He's been saying, Professor Shivaji has been saying and doing the right things. He's gathering back the goodwill squandered by Buhari. I fear that the cabal around President Buhari will move against him, as Shivaji Bola Tinubu must move in to protect his man. And let's pray for him. Michael Shubali says it's high time we stop putting our hope in personalities and we shift our minds to a working system and institutions. Yemi Da Vinci once again says a president that does not deem it fit to tell me the true status of his health does not deserve my prayers. I beg. All right, that's Yemi's opinion. Let's check out the messages now. This one says, I support the policy because Nigerians have been using the loophole to exploit our foreign exchange and sell abroad the changes. Okay, Abiola Labi sent that one from Elega. Quick take. Yes, it's my take. I think CBN needs to learn some lessons from Ghana. It's unfortunate to know that the value of CDs is better than the Naira. Comrade Oni or last sent that one. My take is no, our government doesn't think policies that will not favor them. Can poor man school abroad, seek for medical attention overseas? Why not generalize it? Taiwo from Yupokia sent in that one. And this other one says, yes, I'm not surprised seeing Professor Yemi Shibajo making things happen because both of them have the same mindset and heading towards achieving their aims and objectives. So there's no doubt both of them are good peer, as rightly said by the resource guest in the house. Olaiwola Nuruddin from Igbora sent in that one. Oshiwaju is holding forth excellently. I salute him, but it is mischievous, insincere, and sentimental for those hailing Oshiwaju that his performances in Buhari's absence is far better. For any right-thinking person, can Oshiwaju make any major decisions while on acting capacity without consulting his boss when they are not at loggerheads? If Buhari didn't trust him, what happened in Yaradua's case would have been without transferring power to him. I did sent in that one. I don't expect a question raised that presently we don't have a vice president for now. That question should not arise for now at all. Shivaji is still the vice president, just acting. The president's absence is not yet till eternity. It is when the president can never resume office again that we can talk of vice president becoming president, and then talking of who becomes vice president. I did sent in that message also. Your reactions?
Yeah, thank you so much. Most of the things that have been submitted are more or less comments here and there, supporting what we have submitted earlier. But I've just say make one or two comments. One about Dr. Income. I want us to look at Mr. President's absence from Nigeria as being proceeded on vacation, so that the issue of whether he's here on earth matters and so, for now we should play that one very low. Let us agree, as far as Constitutional Section 145 is concerned, that that Mr. President has proceeded on vacation, and let us leave it as it is, so that other explanations will not come in.
Whether it is a medical vacation,
Whether it is medical
or
or
annual vacation.
The Constitution say proceeding on vacation, and then he has transmitted what needed to be transmitted, and until he comes back and then transmit another thing, the vice president is now the acting president, and that actually answers the question whether we have a vice president or we don't have a vice president. The acting president now is still the vice president until otherwise. So he's still the vice president and is the acting president for now, on paper and in whatever capacity. But it's more or less is the acting president, and he has every power. Now, Kayode has alluded to the fact that Mr. President, the vice president, is now the acting president. He has accepted the mantle of leadership with strong sense of purpose. I still believe that what is being done now is still Buhari or Shibaju, and I see it as a divinely led administration. The two of them together is divinely led administration. Just like when Murtala Obasanjo team were on stage. Remember that Obasanjo said one thing at that time, that he will never deviate from the policies of Murtala, and we all enjoyed it. So we also go ahead to see that in the history of Nigeria, this is the first time that an acting president will sign bills into law. It has become history. He has returned certain bills again, drawing attention to what needed to be done. So we can say that it's a new beginning and it's being done for Nigeria. I want to agree with Fola Akinyemi that what needed to be done now is the promotion of peace and unity, and not making any comparison. Whatever the acting president does now should be regarded as being done by Buhari or Shibaju-led administration, and that will solve the problem. Somebody said that the vice president was not elected, was not the one that is elected. Like I said earlier, if you look at the constitutional provision, Mr. President can never be elected. His election can never be validated
if he does not have
present to us a vice president. So, like I said earlier, the two are subset of each other.
They were both
they are both together. That is just it. Like I said earlier, they are together. They came into office together, but the provisional legal provision does not say they should leave office together. So it has separate area. So it is mutually exclusive. We should shift our mind to institutions and system-driven economy or whatever we say. I agree with that. And then I agree with the person that says that if there's no trust between the president and the acting president, Mr. President will not have transmitted power to him willingly, not reluctantly. I still believe that the trust is there, the mutual trust is there, the confidence is there, the synergy is working in the interest of the country. Let us actually support them. Like I've said, I put down here, what is happening in Nigeria today is a divine intervention from God. And this has actually put us on notice that Buhari or Shibaju is an administration that requires every support and encouragement with absolute confidence from everybody in Nigeria. We should allow it to work.
All right, let's take this call. Hello.
It says, I can see that your guest believes that the combination of Buhari or Shivaju is a divine one. But please, if Buhari cannot continue, what will you call it? Okay. My greetings to you all there. I wish to advise Nigerians to keep on praying that it shall be well soon and not making comments which are not pleasantry. Then we strongly appeal to these our governors not to use the absence of the president for state misrule. Like in Ogun State, now the government has refused to pay Ogun pensioners for going to 3 months now. Please, we appeal to all concerned to pay the senior citizens without delay. This is from High Chief Aguru.
Is that true, Chief Odebo? Because you're also a senior citizen pensioner.
That is not true. Recently, Mr. Governor has paid February pensions for the state. Recently, no, I mean we are in February now. He has paid January. So to date, he has been
up to date.
He has been up to date in payment of pensions.
All right, thank you. Let's move on. Chief Odebo is also a pensioner, so.
Okay, the project Nigeria is marching on as a result of the teamwork led by the acting president and the president. Remember the synergy between President Buhari and late Diagbo. We pray for a speedy recovery for Mr. President. Professor Sam Otubushi sent in that message. Please, for God's sake, stop all this Mr. President leave and health saga. Any human being is bound to be sick, so no big deal about that. Is there no other topic to discuss? A month back, you threw the same topic to the air and it caused so much hula baloo. You heard about the rice the custom went to loot and Sango after the confiscation. It was shared among the customs. These are the areas we need.
Sorry, you can't. We just always complain about on substance.
Solomon, that's Solomon sending that message. I believe those pouring accolades on Professor Oshibajo as performing better than Buhari are the enemies of the PNB government and Nigeria. Does Oshibajo has personal programs? Can he perform miracles in just 1 month? Any positive things we may see now is as a result of what the government has been doing since the inception of the government. I agree that Oshibajo is acting well, but then he still consults his boss, even though power has been transferred to him. Buhari is still the president and still the boss. Okay. We have more tweets. This one says lawyer Ogunye had given us the position of the law and sensitized many Nigerians as well. Both are working towards achieving a common goal. That's from Omidiji Damilari. Lawal Toyin says it is so bad that the mischief makers are using the social media to spread germs at leaving President's health. NUJ should do something. Omidiji Damilari says it's a big shame that PNB and other politicians are flying abroad for medical attention simply because our health infrastructure is in bad shape. John Adiolu says, when we talk of the law, should we not talk of ethics? If we want sanity, we should seek accountability from those we have entrusted it to. And Michael Shuboali says, I think what is happening in Nigeria now is a case of information mismanagement. The Minister of Information should do something on this. Ajibade James says, for God's sake, PNB is our president. It's an act of monkeys for somebody to say we should keep short. We must talk as long as it is not out of the box. The resource person is wonderful. It is a teamwork, a departure from mischief and administration of mischief and untrustworthiness. we had in the past. John Adioli says, it's if it's indefinite stay away is lawful, is it ethical for a public personality as his? Developed minds will surely ask questions. Omidi Jidamlari once again says, only bad belly people in the political corridors are only fighting to have their own share. Please let them leave Shivajo to keep up the good work. For the first time in my area at Elega, we are having electricity for 24 hours. Please, let's leave all this credibility and let Professor Shivajo continue. Can we imagine such instance in the developed nations like US and UK and think of possible reactions where logic rules? Let us see our leaders rather as servants and not as untouchable gods. We just need transparency. May God heal him if he's truly sick. John Adiolu sent in that one also. Nigeria is on its path to greatness. PMB Oshiwajo, we are in safe hands. Big up to the resource person in the studio. God bless Nigeria. And on our Facebook page, this comment was dropped by Deju Gundimu. I have always maintained that there are many loopholes in our constitution which are capable of hindering the genuine development of our country. For a president to stay out of the country definitely as allowed by the constitution is a serious danger that needs to be addressed. As Chief Odebo rightly said, what is the way to forestall the recurrence of this ugly incident is to simply and urgently amend the constitutional provision to this effect as it affects other vital facets. Chief Odebo.
Yes.
Thank you. Most of them are comments, like I said earlier, but let me address one or two issues. Like from Pastor Makinde, if I were to say to meet the acting president, what will I tell him? The first thing I will tell him is to seek peace in the Niger Delta, pursue it vigorously, so that all the installations there will become productive. The refineries must work. After doing that, make sure that you grow the GDP. Grow the GDP by putting in so many things in places like the agriculture, so that you discourage importation of goods from abroad, and then you build up to the south. These are the areas we have to look into immediately. Peace in Niger Delta, put all the refineries in place, ensure that the infrastructures are also put in place, so that we can move the economy forward and build up to the south. The issue of the exchange rate will come down if you address all these issues. So those are the things that I just tell him to do, to really build up, to really put the economy on the strong footing. My brother Ola Anima Sheung, he said, what else can we do? What else can we say? Everything should not be looked at from political angle. I agree with him totally.
Because of our time, that's the much we'll be able to take this morning. Thank you very much, Chief Samson Odebo, FCA, FNIM, for honoring our invitation. I want to appreciate every one of you also who called. Your messages are also duly appreciated, and your tweet. Join us again tomorrow for the Wednesday edition of the show. I am Tobi Joseph.
And I am Dele Ayodo. I say God bless you all. God bless Nigeria. God bless Rock City. And bye-bye to February.